Continuing the combat tree, we have the left hook, right hook, and uppercut skills of Bash, Stun, and Concentrate. Skills that may seem fairly straightforward at first, but hide some weird and interesting mechanics. Some being exploitable, others just being, well, weird. So let's start with the really weird one, Bash. On the screen, you'll see the usual plus percentage damage, plus percent attack rating, and some other odds and ends. This is at first glance a straightforward skill that causes a damage boost and knockback effect, and for most people that's exactly what they will notice it doing. Though that said, it has an odd little plus flat damage sitting there that behaves, well, odd in a handful of ways. The most egregious one being that it actually does not increase the damage, and that would be just the usual lying character screen type deal if it didn't actually have something else weird about it. Namely, the plus damage is applied between dealing damage and determining leech. So with the 30 damage you see here, we can actually leech a tiny minuscule amount of life or mana from even physical immunes like the Wraith you see on screen now, while doing 0 damage. It really is strange and maybe something that gets patched in the future, but is one reason why the damage formula videos can get real fiddly and why most of these guides skip this specific skill. Moving on to the less weird and more straightforward, we have Stun, which does exactly what it says on the tin. Stuns the target while also dealing damage and giving attack rating as most of the skills do. Some important things to remember about this though are that stun length is hard capped at 10 seconds, and due to some rounding, the calculation for its synergy can get a bit fiddly. Though the only time this skill is really useful is when you're still on the struggle bus for equipment, since at higher levels you will generally be killing enemies faster with your main skills. Now, while I will include a link to the chart down below in the description, the key levels for Warcry synergy with this, if you're going for a Stunner Barb at least, or even Warcry Barb that maybe uses this on the side, is at level 20 Warcry you need level 26 Stun to reach the 10-second cap, which probably the lowest you'd want to aim for is probably level 35 Stun and level 15 Warcry to reach the cap, but that's kind of just here and there. With less than that, you'll find that the stun duration will often require an unreasonable 40+ level stun skill to really hit that locking down duration. That said, even the shorter durations we have here are often more than enough for taking down your normal enemies before they recover, unless you are killing way too slow for the difficulty or your build. The third and sadly most often underestimated skill is Concentrate, which like the other two is focused on giving you that extra damage and attack rating, but it also packs some interesting perks and synergies. The most well known being the plus percent defense, which applies for the duration of the attack animation, meaning you can tank up and hold your own fairly well with this on builds oriented around reaching those high base defense values. As long as you're in the animation, you'll have massive defense values. The other aspect, and one people often ignore, is the Berserk synergy, which operates much like the synergy on Frenzy by converting a percent of the physical damage to pure magic damage, maxing out at a 20% conversion, meaning you do 80% physical with this value determined after all the enhanced damage and critical calculations, but before the resistances, so it can be pretty punchy bypassing physical immunes, but still letting you leech should you be using it against a mixed group of enemies that happen to have non-immunes as well. So, do you run any builds centered around Stun or Concentrate? Do you know the damage quirk on Bash? Would you change anything about these skills in 2.5, maybe to integrate this damage a little bit better? Mention it down below, and as always, a special thanks to the patrons and channel members who help keep content like this around. If you'd like to see your name in the credits, check out the links in the description.